Hello friends. Today we will talk about development and emergence of sociology in Europe. Social thought is as old as society itself, yet the origin of sociology is traced back to 19th century Western Europe. Sociology is also called the child of the age of revolution. The revolutionary changes in the preceding 3 centuries had decisively changed the way people lived, thereby paving the way for the emergence of sociology as we have today. Sociology took birth in such a climate of social upheaval. The roots of the ideas developed by the early sociologists lie in the then social conditions that prevailed in Europe. The modern era in Europe and the conditions of modernity were brought about by three major processes. They are the Enlightenment, dawning of the age of reason, the French Revolution, the quest for political sovereignty, the Industrial Revolution, the system of mass manufacture. These revolutions completely transformed not only European society but also the rest of the world as it came in contact with Europe. The revolutions initiated a process of thinking about society, particularly the consequences of revolutionary happenings. Industrial Revolution accelerated the process of urbanization. Urbanization, in its turn, created many social problems. French Revolution led to rethinking about the form of government and practice of democracy. Thus, changes were all around in economy, polity, and social spheres of living. The industrialization, urbanization, and capitalism and the attendant consequences began transforming the societies of Europe. The Enlightenment, it refers to that period in European history, late 17th and 18th centuries, which put human beings at the center of the universe and rational thought as the central feature of the human being. The ability to think rationally and critically transformed the individual human being into both the producer and user of all knowledge. For reason to become the defining feature, it was necessary to displace nature, religion, and divine acts from the central position they earlier occupied. Thus, the attitudes of mind that we refer today as secular, scientific, progressive, and humanistic developed. During the 18th century, Europeans had entered the age of reason and rationalism. Some of the major philosophers whose ideas influenced the people of that time were Montesquieu, Locke, Voltaire, and Rousseau. Montesquieu, in his book The Spirit of the Law, held that there should not be concentration of authority, such as executive, legislative, and judicial, at one place. He believed in the theory of the separation of powers and the liberty of the individual. Locke, an Englishman, advocated that every individual has certain rights which cannot be taken by the authority. These rights were right to life, right to property, and the right to personal freedom. He also believed that any ruler who took away these rights from the people should be removed from the seat of power and replaced by another ruler who is able to protect these rights. Voltaire, a French philosopher, advocated religious toleration and freedom of speech. He also stood for the rights of individuals, for freedom of speech and expression. Rousseau wrote in his book, The Social Contract, that the people of a country have the right to choose their sovereign. He believed that people can develop their personality based only under a government which is of their own choice. This period witnessed a dramatic change in the mental status of people. Society started thinking more pragmatically. The French Revolution. The French Revolution, which erupted in 1789, marked a turning point in the history of human struggle for freedom and equality. It changed the political structure of European society. It put an end to the age of feudalism and ushered in a new order of society. It replaced the age of feudalism by heralding the arrival of democracy. The French society at this time was divided into three estates. The first estate, clergy, religious priests who lived a luxurious life, no taxation on church property. the church never paid taxes. On the other hand, they took tithe. Tithe was the name of the tax they took from the people for worshipping. The second state, nobility, nobles of swords and nobles of robes. Nobles of swords were big landlords who lived as parasite on the hard-working peasants. The third state, commoners, rest of society, including peasants, artisans, merchants, etc. The condition of peasants was miserable. They paid taxes to the both estates, the first estate and the second estate. The first estate, the clergy, took tithe from the peasants, and the second estate took their own taxes, whereas they also took taxes for the king. The revolution announced the arrival of political sovereignty at the level of individuals as well as nation states. It signaled the emancipation of individuals from the oppressive rule of the religious and feudal institutions that dominated French before the revolution. The nation state itself was redefined as a sovereign entity with a centralized government. The ideas of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity, became the watchwords of modern state. This revolution brought about far-reaching changes not only in French society but also in societies throughout Europe. Even societies in other continents were influenced by ideas generated during the revolution. These were many significant themes which arose due to the impact of this revolution, which have been the focus of interest of the early sociologists. These significant themes include the transformation of property, new social class, etc. Now we will talk about the Industrial Revolution. The foundation of modern industry was laid by the Industrial Revolution, which began in England in the late 18th and 19th centuries. It brought about great changes in the social and economic life of the people, first in England, then in other countries of Europe, and later in other continents. It had two important aspects: systematic application of science and technology to industrial production, particularly invention of new machines and harnessing of new sources of power. This facilitated the production process and gave rise to the factory system and mass manufacture of goods. Point number 2, evolved new ways of organizing labor and markets on a scale larger than anything in the past. The goods were produced in a gigantic scale for distant markets across the world. The raw materials used in their production were also obtained from all over the world. Industrialization threw into turmoil societies that have been relatively stable for centuries. New industries and technologies changed the face of social and physical environments. Peasants left rural areas and flocked to the towns, where they worked under appalling conditions. Cities grew at an unprecedented rate. Social problems became rampant in teeming cities. The direction of change was unclear, and the stability of social order seemed threatened. The significant themes of this revolution, which concerned the early sociologists, were the condition of labor, transformation of property, industrial city, urbanism and technology, and the factory system. Against such background, some thinkers of that time were concerned about building their society anew. Those who dealt with these problems are considered as the founding fathers of sociology because they were seriously concerned with these problems in a systematic way. Most notable among the thinkers have been Augustus Comte, Herbert Spencer, Emile Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber. All these pioneers came from different disciplines. Augustus Comte, who is also known as the father of sociology, argued that the methods used in physics should be used for the study of society. Such a study would reveal the laws of evolution and the laws of functioning of society. Once this knowledge was available, we would be able to build society. Auguste Comte, who gave sociology its name, identified 3 stages of human society. Theological, various phenomena were explained in religious terms. Metaphysical, explanations were philosophical. And positivism, phenomena were explained in terms of scientific approach to the social world. Herbert Spencer argued for the universality of the principle of evolution. His view of the evolution of societies is known as social Darwinism. According to him, growth of society was from simple, homogeneous to complex, heterogeneous, as it takes place in an organism. He says, as society tends to evolve, it becomes more and more differentiated. That is, more division of labor takes place. Thus, Spencer coined the word survival of the fittest in his book, Principles of Sociology, later on used by Darwin in his concept of biological evolution. The credit for developing sociology as an independent discipline and science goes to Emile Durkheim, a French sociologist. Durkheim said that sociologists study social facts which are objective and exist in the consciousness of the collectivity. Thus, social fact is exterior to human mind and it constrains on human behavior. Hence, social facts do not have their origin in the individual. In Germany, the most influential work was of Max Weber. In comparison to Durkheim, Weber said that the sociologist studies social action, which is an act an individual performs and assigns meaning. The task of sociologist is to understand the subjective meaning of an act. German social thinker Karl Marx's ideas were influential in sociology. He argued that every society was divided into two classes, with haves and have-nots. He believed that conflict was interior of change in history. He therefore gave central importance to class and class conflict. Thus, the development of sociology in France, Comte, Durkheim, Germany, Marx, Max Weber, and England, Spencer, have been outlined as in above. Their contributions have profound influence in sociology everywhere in the world. Sociology thus flowered in precisely those societies that had experienced the most profound or greatest social changes. France, Germany, and England underwent a truly revolutionary social transformation, and in all these countries, the study of sociology had emerged by the end of the 19th century. Thank you, friends. We will see you in the next lecture.